everybody, the WBE has just started. They've just released their draft for the current VGC Double Battle tournament that they are putting on, obviously put on by aDrive and Wolfie Glick. We are going to be doing the draft analysis breakdown for all of the teams that are currently playing in the VGC Doubles tournament. If we get through the doubles in time, we'll also move into Joey PokeAim MD's single tournament as well that is going on simultaneously. First off, we're going to be taking a moment and thanking, obviously, aDrive and crew before we actually get started with the breakdown. Obviously, aDrive working on getting everything set up, and KG working on all the graphics for them. Thanking them now just because I'm stealing one of their graphics for it, but make sure to go out and take a look at aDrive and KG's channels for all of the content. Now, enough prattling. Let's get into it. Let's take a look at the first team for the WBE. Here we go. Alright guys, without further ado, here we are. We are going to be looking at the first pick for the WBE VGC tournament. And funny enough, with luck may have it, aDrive was the first pick in the snake draft that they did for the WBE. We've got his team on the far left-hand side there. Obviously, his Minnesota Vikavolts right above me, and his Twitter handle up there. Make sure to go drop him a follow if you're excited to watch him play these matches. They're always enjoyable, but let's get into this team here. From the top, we're going to read through the team, and then I'll give you some thoughts. We have G-Max Blastoise as his G-Max pick. For his Tier 1, he got Togekiss. For Tier 2s, he got a Lowland Ninetales, Bronzong. Tier 3s are Luxray, Serena. Tier 4 for Hitmonchan. And then as his free picks, which you can go take a look at the WBE's page for all the details on how these were tiered, along with all the tier statistics. I'll leave a link down below in the comments for that. He did pick up Rhyperior, Turtonator, a Lowland Sandslash, and finally Drapion. So let's talk about the team. I'm going to start from the top. We're going to start with Blastoise. I'll give you guys my thoughts on what I'm seeing for the team, the potential I'm seeing, the options here, just some general thoughts about it, and we'll work our way down the list. And then when we get through the list, I'll give you some sort of pseudo thoughts on the other teams that are currently in the league. Obviously, you won't have all of these available with my breakdown, but you can easily go take a look at the teams yourselves or the teams' breakdowns of the various people playing in the league. But we're going to start with the big gears. That's what I'm going to call this section here, is the big gears. The big gears that aDrive really picked into this team here are really focused around three things. The first one is redirection. He's the #1 best redirect in the current format of Pokemon for Sword and Shield. Togekiss does so much work here, but the big gear that he has there is Follow Me potential with it, along with the potential of a Turtonator with its signature Shell Shield move. Second major gear here we see, as you can tell, a Lowland Ninetales, a Lowland Sandslash, G-Max Blastoise. All of these Pokemon play well in Hail. We can definitely see there's a backup Hail team potential here that aDrive sort of focused in and said, let me get a couple of these options in just in case one of my other primary strategies doesn't work. And this is a great strategy for VGC content in general, having multiple gears for a team. Being able to say, okay, this strategy is not going to work, let me move to this one instead. Finally, the biggest gear here that you see is probably going to be pretty obvious when you see Bronzong, Rhyperior, Turtonator, and about half of his team, if you want the honesty of the speed tiers here, is looking like Trick Room. It is a great Trick Room potential on this team. Bronzong obviously able to set it up, paired with Serena there, would be able to easily get a Trick Room up without being faked out or anything like that with Serena's ability, Queenly Majesty. We'll talk a bit more about when we get into the specific Pokemon, but definitely the three major gears that I see aDrive playing in here are going to be Trick Room, Hail, and the redirect potential. Alright, let's break into the Pokemon specifically of the team, starting at the top with G-Max Blastoise. Okay, so for G-Max Blastoise, we have a bunch of different options here. There is a wide variety of potential with Blastoise, especially now with its G-Max move, G-Max Cannonade. Obviously, if you guys don't know what that does, it sets up a damage over time, just like Charizard's G-Max and Venusaur's G-Max. Damage over time, except for the typing that the Pokemon is. So obviously fire types aren't affected by Charizard, water types aren't affected by Blastoise's damage over time here. But setting up Blastoise's G-Max Cannonade on anything is going to be doing 1/6 of the HP every turn for 4 turns. So if you really think about this, by the time aDrive has G-Maxed, hit 1 Cannonade, the next 4 turns, you're essentially chunking down, if the Pokemon stay in their entirety, for 2/3 of the health of the Pokemon that are in the field currently, not including any other damage done. So the potential there to really, even against defensive or specially defensive Pokemon, the potential here to just whittle away at them every turn is extreme with G-Max Blastoise. Obviously, you can be running it also on the special side or the physical side here. Special sides tend to be running things like Blizzard, which pairs very well with the Lowland Ninetales, getting the hail up for 100% accurate Blizzards. We also have the potential for a Shell Smash physical set or special set there. Shell Smash, obviously a signature move with Blastoise now in Gen 8. Maximizing its speed and its special attack or attack, and essentially allowing it to dish out some major damage. Also, we won't sleep on it, we'll mention it briefly, the fake out potential with Blastoise is also there, and running a bulkier set instead of a speed set also has great possibility here. He could run a bulky Assault Vest Blastoise and potentially fake out turn 1, still get the G-Max off. There's a bunch of variety on items here that Blastoise can actually be running now, whether it's going super offensive or not. Alright, next up, let's talk about our favorite. Let's talk about Togekiss, the #1, until very recently, Pokemon that was on the VGC ladder. Togekiss has such variety in its potential here. We have physically defensive, we have offensive, we have specially offensive, we have support sets, we have controlling support sets. There's so many options with Togekiss. I'm not going to get into every single one of them. I'm going to highlight the major 3 that I think we're going to see in the WBE coming out of aDrive's team here. Major ones that I'm expecting to see here are the standard support set, the Follow Me, the Air Slash, the Flamethrower or Heat Wave, and the setup of possible max Airstreams if he decides to Dynamax it. Obviously, Dazzling Gleam would be the 4th slot there. We could also see him running potentially a Serene Gray set. The standard Serene Gray set hasn't really changed at all in years of VGC content. It is always Paraflinch your way to victory with Air Slash and T-Wave, and Togekiss can just monster its way through the amount of flinches it gets because of the ability Serene Grace. But also, as of recently, the Super Luck ability have really come into play here, not just because of Anger Point Tauros. We're going to shove that over into a corner and pretend like we don't talk about it here, because no one drafted Tauros, we're good. But the ability to get those crit Dazzling Gleams off, or just still be able to get the support potential, while also doing a lot of damage because of those critical hits. Togekiss is a monster on the field, not to mention those are just the support sets. If we ran an offensive Togekiss, the max Airstreams coming off of that thing are huge. And we also shouldn't sleep on the fact that he's running a Lowland Sandslash. That gets Ice Shard and can proc a weakness policy real quick on turn 1. There's nothing more frightening than a weakness policy pop Togekiss that's setting up max Airstreams and just getting faster and stronger every turn. Don't sleep on this pick. That, for sure, is going to be one of the Pokemon that I say every week will be on aDrive's team. 100%. Alright, next on the line, we have a Lowland Ninetales. Talk about a great sleeper pick. When aDrive drafted this, he said it best, and I will only highlight what he said. It's a Lowland Ninetales. It sets Hail immediately on coming out. It's got the Aurora Veil potential. It has Blizzards at 100% accuracy. Freeze Dry for any of those pesky water types that come, especially for the mono water type team that we'll talk about later in coming videos. And it can just bring in potential across the team. It brings in great support and great offensive. It can have Blastoise come in for double Blizzard potential. You can have a Lowland Sandslash coming in with its abilities to either go really fast in Hail or be more evasive in Hail with Snowcloak. It has great pairings there. It also even has great pairings with Rhyperior potentially, depending on whether he's trying to set up with weakness policy there. The only problem that you'd run into there is speed control. Next up, let's talk about the #1 Trick Room Pokemon that aDrive brought. The only Trick Room Pokemon now that I think about it. Let's talk about Bronzong. Bronzong obviously has been used by Dan a couple of times before, so this is really nothing new for him. It is a very safe pick. It is a very good Trick Room pick. It can be physically defensive, especially defensive. Bronzong is a tanky monster. He does well with Trick Room. He does well with his 2 abilities, which now actually can be feasibly run. You no longer just have to lock yourself into Levitate Bronzong to dodge those Earthquakes. He can actually lock into Heat Proof against a couple of these teams and have better potential to actually absorb hits, because those pesky fire types like Charizard, G-Max Charizard, I believe one team is running like Cinderace and Reboot. There are a bunch of options there that don't want to absorb fire type attacks, but Bronzong, already not wanting to with that ability Heat Proof, will do a lot better with the current team setups. Obviously, it also has the ability to Bulldoze, Speed Swap, so Bulldoze potential there for the weakness policy on Rhyperior, or Lowland Sandslash, and even potentially into the Luxray slot if he was running a physically offensive Luxray for some reason. Like, the potential here just explodes for being one of the best support Pokemon to draft for a draft league team. I don't think we have to spend too much time on this next Pokemon, but highlighting out Luxray here is probably one of my favorite things to do, as Luxray is my favorite Pokemon line. Luxray has such a wide variety of potential. Most of the time people are running the Intimidate set in either running it full support or trying to run it bulky offensive, so I'll speak to these 2 briefly. It can run Snarl, it can run Baby Doll Eyes, it has great support options, it has the potential to do so much to support whatever is in the back line of the team. You tend not to see too often used because it does tend to be one of the Pokemon that is good but not great for the VGC level content, especially when you have no limitations to what you're picking, but you shouldn't sleep on this pick for a good support mon. And at the same time, the offensive Flame Orb Guts boosted Luxray is nothing to shake a stick at. If you have good speed control and are able to either speed it up or slow it down with Trick Room, I could potentially see a sweep with Luxray coming into one of the matches in aDrive's future. We're just going to have to wait and see whether he does. Alright, next up we have Serena. Serena is a very interesting Pokemon due to its ability and actually some of the Isle of Armor moves that actually just recently came out. Obviously its ability Queenly Majesty, as I mentioned earlier, stops any priority moves from happening. This is Rillaboom with Grassy Glide. This is a Gale Wings Talonflame. This would be Fake Out. Anything that's currently in the priority move potential is immediately blocked by having Serena. So certain teams are going to have to be able to function and understand that Dan might have brought Serena in the back to purely block any of these priority moves from actually coming in. Following up with that, Serena also gets access to one of its newer moves besides Drop Kick and some of its other standard sets. It does get access to Triple Axle now, which, while not 100% accurate, a triple hitting ice type physical move could be really potentially deadly and provide some fantastic coverage for this team. Alright, next up we got our boy Hitmonchan, a pretty standard, yet again, one that aDrive has used at least a couple of times throughout his career playing the draft league. Great Assault Vest user, great potential with Fake Out, Bullet Punch, Mach Punch, Drain Punch. It's a great physical offensive threat. It has good coverage for dark types, which his team was lacking originally when he was in the draft and going back and forth, but it also is just bulky enough where it doesn't go down with one hit. It's not going to be something that's just swatted away at. It's a good pickup, definitely a good Pokemon to be bringing into the draft league, and hopefully we'll get to see a couple potential options with it. I also should mention it can pick up Rapid Spin and start stacking its speed stat for itself, which is also another great potential. Next up, I don't think we need to say much on this Pokemon here. It's pretty straightforward. It's the tanky demon that is Rhyperior. Rhyperior obviously having a shitty special defense stat, but is able to easily cover itself with the potential of Sand being brought up with a max Rockfall, the weakness policy pop to make sure anything goes down to one of its hits with Bulldoze or Ice Shard potentially, depending on where aDrive's currently playing against opponents. There's great potential for the Solid Rock ability to come into play here and mitigate some of the damage from those super effective hits. And ultimately, I expect anytime we see Trick Room coming out of aDrive's team, Dan for sure is going to bring a weakness policy Rhyperior. It would be a pick that would be never once slept on. Next up, we got another, and I'm going to call it the weakest pick, that the weakest pick of the draft for aDrive, and that's Turtonator. Originally, when I saw him draft this, I was like, is he joking? Is he just going to trade this off for something else afterwards immediately? And I kind of sat there and like listened to his explanation of it as he was drafting, and I don't disagree with what he says. He needed Dragon-type coverage, he needed Fire-type coverage. It's not an awful Pokemon. And clearly, due to the fact that they were doing draft, a lot of the major fire types like your Cinderace, your Charizard, your Torkoal, all those have been picked up already. So it's a late game sleeper pick is the way I'm going to phrase it. But I still don't think you're ever going to really see this thing coming unless it is he must cover with a fire type specifically. Next up, we have one of my favorite picks for his team. And he mentioned down towards the end drafting one of two Pokemon. It was either Beartic or Lowland Sandslash. And thankfully, due to both being available and him looking at coverage factors, he picked up on Lowland Sandslash. Great Pokemon, fantastic Pokemon from Sun and Moon. Obviously, running Snowcloak for the evasion boost or Slush Rush for the speed boosts here. It's got better coverage than Beartic, in my opinion. With the steel type moves like Iron Head, Flinch Potential. We also have Icicle Spear, Icicle Crash, Ice Shard, and a bunch of other very well functioning under Hail Team moves. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a physically bulky set every time. I can see some real potential with a weakness policy Lowland Sandslash coming in after either Ninetales or another Pokemon going down, and being able to come in, Dynamax, and immediately sweep a team. There's some great potential here that some teams are going to have to play very safely around Hail to make sure that that doesn't come in and destroy them. Finally, the last Pokemon on the list for the Minnesota Vikavolts was Drapion. Drapion, a great Poison Dark type, having fantastic coverage there for some of the other teams that are out there where Dan was lacking a little bit in the typing variety. It can be a very physically offensive set with its sniper ability, running Crunch and Poison Jab, being able to monster out some big hits. It also does have a lot of support potential though, with moves like Taunt and Snarl, and being able to essentially debuff the team that it's facing. I would say we could sleep on the Toxic being an option. It does get it, but again, VGC content being what it is, I don't predict to see too many status affecting moves, at least coming off of Dan's team. Alright, let's take a second here and talk about leads. Specifically, I want to call out leads for the team to sort of give you guys a interesting perspective on what I think we're going to potentially see throughout the matches as we go through the WBE this season. Primarily, I'm seeing about 4 baseline leads with a 5th potential depending on what Dan goes up against week by week. The big ones, as you guys can kind of predict, are Togekiss anything. And I say legitimately anything on that list over there. He could lead Togekiss Blastoise and do some redirecting for a Cannonade. He could lead Togekiss Ninetales to make sure he gets the Hail up, even though that would potentially break the sash on Togekiss if it was running one. Togekiss Bronzong for the safest Trick Room you've ever seen. Togekiss Serena to block the Fake Outs coming in. There's just so many options with Togekiss because it is the greatest redirect Pokemon in Generation 8, where I could see any Pokemon that he potentially has in the team coming out front with that thing and being a very safe lead-off. Next 2 big ones are the Hail Team sets. That would be Alolan Ninetales and G-Max Blastoise, and Alolan Ninetales and Alolan Sandslash. These ones are pretty straightforward. Obviously, in Hail, we'd have 100% accuracy Blizzards coming out of Ninetales and Blastoise. We also have the ability to set Aurora Veil with Alolan Ninetales immediately. So, if Dan was looking to really get defensively first set up, That's a very safe G-Max Blastoise with a Aurora Veil, and then you could just switch a Lowland Ninetales out to keep Hill for later. Obviously, if he's running Sand Slash, you've got the Slush Rush potential, or the Snow Cloak, and another safe Dynamax and a Lowland Sand Slash. But just the amount of offensive prowess that two special attacking Pokemon leads with Hail and Blizzard, I could see this being exactly like some of Dan's previous matches in the VGC ladder, where you just double-click Blizzard with Inteleon in this case, but Blastoise now, and you just watch things just disappear and get frozen. Finally, the other big lead I could predict here, depending on whether a team has Fake Out or not, would be a Bronzong and a Rhyperior lead. Potentially, as I mentioned for the 5th, switching in the Serena as well to block the Fake Out if there was a Fake Out lead. But this is the standard, let me get Trick Room up, let me get Rhyperior in, and let me just start murdering things. However he goes about doing it with Bronzong in the front, I would expect it's probably going to be either like Serena or Togekiss, but potentially once that Trick Room is clicked and the enemy team has no way of stopping it, Rhyperior just comes in and starts wailing things down. Next up, we're going to talk gaps. What gaps I see in the team, what gaps I see potentially throughout the league as he goes through, and where I think if I saw trades or transactions coming future case, where I think they might go. There are two big gaps here in this team, and Dan does a good job of covering them slightly, but I think as the league goes on, we could see some better coverage for these things. The two major ones are the Fire and Grass weaknesses. If we take a look at Dan's team, we're seeing a huge weakness to Fire. We're looking at a Lowland Ninetales, Bronzong, even with Heat Proof, it still takes a lot of damage. Serena, a Lowland Sand Slash, all of those are very weak to the Fire typing, obviously. And I would add the caveat that I would add Rhyperior and even potentially Hitmonchan in there, because we have one team with Charizard and one team with G-Max Charizard. So potentially both teams would be running Solar Beam and Air Slash and Flamethrower or Heat Wave, where Charizard comes in on any of these Pokemon, and as long as its speed tier is correct, could just immediately smash their way through it. So I don't necessarily have a good answer to keeping Charizard off the field unless he catches it on a switch-in. Blastoise obviously being the best answer to it, but if someone's keeping a Pocket Charizard or G-Max Charizard in the back and waiting for Blastoise to go down, I could see a reverse sweep coming immediately for that. Second big weakness, as I mentioned, is the bulky grass types. We're talking Rillaboom, G-Max Rillaboom here, Tangrowth, a couple of different Pokemon that have been drafted in the league just because of the front line going down. So this would be like G-Max Blastoise going down to one of these Pokemon, Rhyperior not being able to hold up long enough against these Pokemon. Their chances are we're not going to see much fight from most of the teams, but there are a couple of teams. K-Cray, for instance, has G-Max Venusaur with the G-Max Vinelash that could just do potentially large amounts of damage with good coverage against other things that would come in, and just like Blastoise, will be slowly whittling away every turn. Besides that, the Rhyperior is the important piece to sort of keep in the back, and that large weakness to grass typing, I think, could potentially be the downfall if played very well against. For coverage future case, my only expectation is here I would drop Turtonator. That's the only thing where I could say it's better to just pull a straight fire type than Turtonator, in my opinion. I don't necessarily have a good switch-in option, but at this point, I could see a lot of different Pokemon that are just pure fire typing that could do just as much as Turtonator could without the large amount of bulk, but the speed tier, that might be important. Lastly, we're going to talk about matchups. I polled all 16 teams that were up on the list to see what teams I thought Dan would stand a good chance against and which ones I think he'll really need to do some prep for. The teams that I think Dan will do the best against is Poise, Jack, aka Nerd Out, and Moxie. The reasons for this is for Poise's team, he just essentially has better bulk. If you look at Poise's team, and I'll try and link it future case, If you look at Poise's team, the only potential he really has is that Rillaboom out front, where as long as the fake out can be blocked with either Serena or just by taking a fake out, there's really no stopping Dan's team from just rolling over top of them. There could be a couple of potential crazy movements that Poise could make for it, but I think for the most part, as long as Dan's able to get rid of that Rillaboom fast enough, there's going to be no contest against that team. Second one, as I mentioned, Jack, Nerd Out. He's got a lot of electric immunity, Dan does, by that, and Jack is centered around Alolan Raichu and Indeedee, where he's going to be popping off the expanding forces and the discharges maybe, and I see that just being rolled immediately over by Rhyperior. The redirect potential that Jack has is good with Indeedee, but I don't see it being able to hold up against a Rhyperior under Trick Room and pretty much anything else on the team standing next to it. That's going to be a very quick one-shot against it. It's an even quicker one-shot against Alolan Raichu because it does not have immunity to ground typing. Finally, Moxie's team. Moxie's team is fantastic. I love it, but it is very, very weak to Trick Room. So if Dan is able to successfully get a Trick Room up and maintain it, I don't see any reason that he doesn't roll immediately over that team just because they're not going to be able to get a single move in place. Finally, let's talk about the teams I think Dan is going to be a little bit pressured against, but mainly because there's going to be a lot of prep and a lot of calculations for his team's EVs and IVs for this to work perfectly. Three teams that I think he's going to have a real challenge against are in Vivid Color, Vivid, Reversal, and K-Cray's team. We already mentioned K-Cray, so I'll start with her. She's running G-Max Venusaur, and G-Max Venusaur rolls both Rhyperior and Blastoise, and it also has reasonable coverage against Alolan Sandslash, Alolan Ninetales with its Earth Power, and can also do a very good job about mopping up the Serena and the Drapion as well, with that Poison type immunity being Poison type. Reversal's team is the Mono Water type team I mentioned beforehand. I could really see Dan doing either really well against this team with having Blastoise be able to soak up a lot of hits, or I could see him really struggling if they're able to remove Serena or Blastoise from the field. The amount of coverage that he would need to essentially block this team would probably be Blastoise, Togekiss, Luxray, Serena. But if he brings that and Reversal decides to switch it up a little bit and not bring his standard 4 water types, I could see that being a very uphill battle. And finally, in Vivid Color's team, the South Texas Sableyes, Vivid has extreme potential with the Pylosand due to its ability, Water Compaction. He can immediately get up a huge defensive wall in Pylosand and Dynamax it to be able to do lots of damage, potentially with the weakness policy. That's one of Wolfie's recent sets that he ran, and that thing just sits there and can tank the world away. So if Dan's potentially running a specially offensive team with Ninetales and Blastoise, I could see him immediately overwhelming this team, just because once Pylosand goes down, there's really nothing in the back to tank those kind of blows. But if he's able to get a good switch in with a Water Shuriken coming out of Aselgor and get that Water Compaction all the way up for Pylosand, I could see Dan struggling with a mostly physically offensive team to break that wall. Definitely something he can plan against, but I think that's going to be a big challenge for him as the season goes on. There you have it, guys. That is my breakdown of Dan, aka aDrive's team, the Minnesota Vikavolts, for the WBE season that is just about to get started. Obviously, you can check out the links for Dan's channel. They will be down there in the description. Make sure you go watch his matches. They happen every Saturday on his channel, and also will probably be moved over to the WBE channel as well. I'll put a link for both of them below. Guys, if you enjoyed this, let me know which one of the creators you want covered next. Obviously, click that subscribe button up here, and make sure you check out Dan's team breakdown right over here. We'll catch you guys all for the next team breakdown. Peace.